Hello, thank you all. Welcome to our live event. It's a live session on US diaspora and retirement abroad. And I'm really sorry we kept you waiting, but we had a few bits and bobs to organize here before we started. But we're here now. Thank you. And before I introduce our theme and the guests, we have some housekeeping before the live. This is being recorded, so it will be available on YouTube at the end. So if you don't have the time to stay all the way to the end, rest assured that all the information will be available. And also, we are live. The production team will correct me later, but I believe we are also live from Facebook and LinkedIn. So we have now our guests here, as you can see from the screen. They are Doris Spear. She is the president of the Association for Americans Residents Overseas, in short, ARO. We have Laura Snyder, a tax consultant at ARO, and Paul Atkinson, his banking law specialist at ARO. And so the ARO is a non-partisan global non-profit organization that addresses issues facing Americans living abroad and advocating for their fair treatment by the US government. Also joining us in this live session is Amanda Klekowski von Kompenfels. She is lead researcher in migration and policy and expert in American diaspora, and also author of Migrants and Expatriates. It's a book available on Amazon. Also, there are other means for you to get this book. We'll talk about that when we speak to Amanda. And last but not least, we have Laura Madrid Sartoreto. She is the research lead at Global Citizen Solutions, newly launched intelligence unit. So Laura will bring her expertise on global relocation to discuss with all of us here, trends and challenges faced by American diaspora based outside the US. So before we start, I'd like to say that this should take around 40 minutes. Or less or more, but no more than 45 minutes. We will let you know a bit more about the launch of the intelligence unit, which is a department from Global Citizen Solutions. I'll ask the production team to share the screen with us if they can. It's just the website which showcases the platform. There you go. So this is the home platform. It's a knowledge hub. Here you will see the reports that are upcoming and also the current ones. The briefings are shorter insights with trends about global mobility, data, as well, and you will see there some of our latest reports were on the super election year 2024, where half of the population has gone or is going to the polls. And what does it mean? How does it impact investment migration and migration in general? And we also have the European Courts of Justice voting on Malta Citizenship by Investment Program. And lots more to come. The upcoming reports that we will see in the next white paper will be about digital nomadism. So it's a big one that is currently on being cooked, and Laura will be able to talk about that later. So so let's talk to Laura quickly. Hi, Laura.
Hello. I'm fine. Thank you very much.
I'd like to speak to you first because I know our guests have been waiting. So I'm going to jump straight away onto the retirement guide for the US expats. Okay. So let's talk about it. It's the key findings of the publication and what's the importance of the guide for American US for US retirees in today's context?
Thank you very much, Zen. I'm super happy to announce that this is our first publication of Global Intelligence Unit at Global Citizen Solutions. And one of the most relevant features of this research is that we developed this 16 top countries index using data analysis tools to process publicly available data and experts insights in order to generate relevant information. So the guide will bring this top 16 countries index. And if you talk a little bit about methodology, we identified 8 key indicators and organized them in 3 sub-indices: quality of life, security and integration, and economics. And then we assigned weight to each of the indicator based on our research and our database. And we came up with this list of 16 best countries for US retirees to relocate. This is one of the important aspects of this guide. But the other one is that we examined this growing trend on international retirement migration among US retirees. Of course, factors as cost of living, safety, and political stability are driving this trend. And we also identified a convergence of factors that are positively impacting global mobility, especially among US expats. First of all, we, of course, in the last decade, we have the development and the evolution of technology and communication, and long distance transportation reduction costs. And with that, we had also the development of this industry of global mobility. So we have specific products that are tailor-made for specific segments of people that want to relocate. In addition to that, we have the effects of the pandemic. So people are reassessing their desire to relocate and to improve their quality of life. And of course, moving abroad is one of the strategies. And last but not least important, we have this wider acceptance of dual and multiple citizenship. So when you talk about individuals and as well when you talk about countries, we see that more and more people are accepting the idea of using relocation and second citizenship as a strategy to improve their life quality or to stretch further their pensions. And countries are losing their legislation on the acquisition of nationality. So it doesn't matter if it's through nationality by descent or by birth or through naturalization processes. Countries are actually losing their legislation, and people now have more access to the possibility of having double citizenship or multiple citizenship, and also to relocate through investment migration schemes and other possibilities that countries will offer. And finally, we have in our guide the experts' insights on challenges and that US expats face when relocating, and this very important analysis on the recent American diaspora. And we have our collaborators here to share their expertise on all those subjects.
Thank you, Laura. That's a very good point, which I forgot to address at the beginning, and thanks for bringing that up. This guests, all our guests here today, they are here because they contributed to the US Retirement Guide, to the report, in their own area of expertise. So they provided some brilliant insights about their field, and that's why they're here to talk to us about it. So Laura, thank you very much. Pandemic has certainly been a catalyst and changed a lot the the scenario here. You mentioned the challenges, and then with that, I'd like to link it to Doris. So, Doris, we understand that ERA has over 10,000 members, right? And can you give us some insights into the main motivations driving Americans to move abroad, and the key factors they consider when they're choosing a country for relocation?
Thank you for inviting me. Hello, everybody. The reason that people move abroad are very varied. People they're sent abroad for work. Maybe they come for school and then they remain, or they have family over here, they come for that. And then they just stay. And some people, they come for love. They've met somebody maybe in the States and come overseas. They come for all kinds of reasons, and there's a lot being written on the various reasons why people move overseas. And financial reasons are quite important. Healthcare is very important too, because people in the United States realize that once you're overseas, there are a lot of options in terms of healthcare that one does not have in the United States. It's a lot less expensive than in the United States. Also, the cost of living in some countries, especially in Europe, is less than it would be in many cities of the United States. So there are many varied reasons for people to move overseas.
Okay, thank you. And then let's talk about the members. I said that, sorry, there are about 10,000 members. Where are they all over the world?
Well, actually, we have 1,100 members, not 10,000 members.
Okay, thank you.
1,100 members, yes. And we are basically most of them are in Europe. We are in 40 countries all over the world. We're spread quite broadly. I would say that the majority of them are in the European countries, but we have people in Australia, in China, in Japan, in many South American countries. As I said, more than 40 countries. I don't expect you to give me the list right now, but we're very well represented worldwide.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Doris. And now I will ask Amanda. So, Amanda, based on your research on the American diaspora, how significant is political and social instability in influencing the decision of U.S. citizens that wish to relocate?
That's a really good question. Thanks so much for that. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here. There was a lot of what we call anecdotal mentions of, I'm going to leave the country, I'm going to move to Canada, I'm going to move to Europe. And a colleague and I, Helen Bimero of Tufts University, she and I together did a survey in 2014 asking U.S. citizens. It was a representative survey done in the United States. If you had the opportunity, do you think you might move abroad? And roughly 1/3 of people said, sure, I'd think about it. And it ranged from, I'd give it a bit of thought, to, yes, I'm planning on moving next month. And in 2019, we asked them the same question again. And we anticipated that the figures would be higher. We were surprised to find out they were not significantly different. So between 2014 and 2019, we found no substantive increase. And given the increase in social and political instability, or perceived through anecdotal reports in those 5 years, we really had anticipated seeing a change. We will be rerunning that survey this year to see if there has been a change between 2019 and 2024. People certainly do leave for reasons of political and social instability, but for the moment, that does not seem to be a major driver. As Doris said, what I call the trifecta of leaving for partnership, work, and study really do seem to be remaining the three main reasons that people will leave.
Sorry, what's the major driver then? I didn't get that.
Oh, sorry. The three main factors tend to be partnership. The top one seems to really be being with a partner, and work and study. And of course, retirement is a key one as well, but it just numerically doesn't seem to fall within that top three.
Yeah, perfect. Good. So there is a lot of anecdotal research. That's good to know. And when do you think the new research will be done? You said it will be sometime this year.
we're going to be rolling it out this summer, and we should have data available by the end of the year.
Looking forward to it. Laura, let's make a note here to revisit the subject again towards basically beginning of 2025. Thanks, Amanda. Now, Laura, since I mentioned your name, I'm going to ask about the research that you've done, okay? What do the statistics reveal about this research you finished about the motivation for Americans? But I'm talking about the retirees or those planning to retire to relocate to another country.
Yeah, as Amanda mentioned, and we didn't focus on the tripod like family, study, and work. That's why we found out that the cost of living is one of the main motivations for retirees to think about relocating in another country. We know that nowadays it's difficult that the retirees will solely rely on public funds for their pension. So relocation can be a strategy for personal financial planning, for having and securing stable retirement. And what is related to that, not only property prices and expenses, but healthcare, as Doris mentioned. So people usually look for reliable and affordable healthcare system. In Europe, we have like a public healthcare system that is reliable, but many people look for a combination of reliable public healthcare system and cost-effective private insurance. Also, especially in the case of US retirees, there is a main preoccupation that is tax optimization, because the US is a citizen-based taxation system. So countries that will not will not tax foreign earned income or would have special tax regimes for retirees would be their preferences. Also, we know that sometimes it is anecdotal, but safety and political stability is one of the motivations that appear when we think about the desire to relocate. And then countries with low levels of violence and stable political environments will be what these individuals will look for. And one factor that for us at the beginning was not that relevant, but then when we were talking to people, it became very relevant, is proximity to family. So a short flight distance country would be preferred over countries that are far away from the US. And it's not coincidence that Mexico and Canada are the countries that have the largest numbers of American expatriates to date. So those are the main factors when we did our research. But of course, other elements such as weather, the sense of belonging, cultural richness and vibrance of the relocation country, and English proficiency would be relevant for people when they decide where to relocate.
How relevant is weather? I'd ask all of you here when expats made the decision to move abroad. And I'm just asking because at Global Citizen Solutions, we attend events and conferences, and we often have people asking us, and the decisive factor is the weather. They want, somewhere warm and sunny throughout most of the year.
I agree with that.
Doris, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, because people are looking for quality of life. Yeah. And that encompasses just about everything we've spoken about so far. But quality of life is enhanced if the weather is good, because people, especially people who retire overseas, they want to have that sort of cafe society where you can sit outside, take long walks, and maybe do some exercise and things like that. So weather really plays into the desire for where one would move overseas. And I think people wouldn't say, oh, good, it rains every day in this place, let's go retire there so we can walk in the rain. I don't know of anybody that's ever said that. So yeah, weather I think is quite important.
Yeah, I agree. Who else here? Amanda?
To that as well, Jizan. I just was going to say that there are large retirement communities of U.S. citizens in Mexico. And many of those are people who were not able to retire to Florida for cost reasons, or Arizona. Indeed, we're in search of a warmer climate that might be good for arthritis or so forth. And they're able to have a higher quality of life, a better standard of living with lower living costs in Mexico than they would, for instance, in Florida or Arizona.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Well, right. So, Amanda, since you mentioned the cost of living, I want to bring up the topic of tax optimization. And for that one, I'd like Laura to give us some thoughts on how citizen-based taxation can negatively impact U.S. citizens living abroad. Can you share a few thoughts on that?
Sure. There's quite a bit to say on that, so I can only summarize. That's the best I can do in the time we have. Maybe for those who don't know anything about the subject, I'll start at the very beginning, which is that most countries will tax people based either on residency because they live in that country, in which case they'll tax most countries the worldwide income of their residents, regardless of their citizenship. And then if someone who doesn't live in the country has income sourced in that country, they will tax that income that was sourced in that country to people who don't live there. And that's what most countries do, more or less. The United States does both of those things, but it has another layer in which if you are a U.S. citizen and you live outside the United States, the United States taxes you also on your worldwide income, not just on your U.S. source income, but on your worldwide income. And when you first hear that, you might kind of shrug at that and think, so what? But actually, this is has a lot of repercussions. It causes a lot of problems for two reasons. First of all, when you live in another country as an American, you aren't exempt from the tax system of that country. So you find yourself living under two tax systems, the one where you live and the one of the United States. And I don't think there's any tax system that's compatible with the United States' tax system. So you have to make your life work under two tax systems. It's very difficult for most people. And then also what makes that difficult is that the United States tax code penalizes many, many things that are foreign source. So, your foreign investments in particular. And when you live overseas, your whole life, potentially, and for those who have lived overseas on a long-term basis, likely, is foreign to the United States. So you find yourself, living in England or France or Canada or Mexico or Australia or wherever it is you are, with income from that country, with investments in that country, and you find out the United States is penalizing all of those things at the same time that you're not, most Americans don't live in low tax jurisdictions. So again, there's quite a bit that can be said about that, but what ultimately happens is that the longer someone lives overseas, the more their income is sourced outside the United States, the more they will find themselves having problems saving for retirement, making other kinds of investments, operating a small business, owning their own home, receiving social welfare benefits. You'll find some people, they're getting unemployment or maternity benefits in the country where they live, and it's taxed by the United States, where it may or may not be taxed where they live. And on top of that, because the way the United States penalizes so many foreign sourced income, and it requires extra reporting, Americans who live outside the United States find that their tax returns can, even if their income is relatively simple or even low, they can find that their tax returns are very, very complicated. A lot of opportunities for mistakes, which means a lot of opportunities for penalties. So, and then there's also banking issues. But if I understand correctly, Paul's going to talk more about the banking issues.
Yeah, that's it. So Paul will talk about the banking issues. But before you go, I just wanted to, because we had Doris came past to this, and then we talked about actions that are being taken to mitigate or at least change the current scenario of the citizen-based taxation. Is there anything you want to talk about, Laura, at the moment? Is there any talks happening in Parliament? Any provision or prediction on when this could change, or if this will change at all?
Well, predictions, that would be hard. There's been many people for decades working for change. It's very difficult. An important part of change is just educating on the problems, and that's quite difficult to do. It's difficult when you're not, when your head isn't in the space of living outside the United States. It's difficult for someone to care about these issues and want to think about these issues. But there's been organizations, Arrow, of course, one of them, who have been, working for many years to try and educate people, to get, especially educate policymakers in Washington, to get their attention on these issues, to get them to understand these are issues that really do need to be addressed. Arrow's been advocating on behalf of overseas Americans on multiple issues for decades. Arrow's had a lot of success with citizenship issues and voting issues. And we've been working quite a bit. We continue to work on citizenship, voting, Social Security, and now taxation, for a while taxation. We publish different things. We make submissions to different governmental bodies, different congressional, when hearings are held, we make submissions. We, every year we have our Overseas Americans Week, when we spend the whole week visiting with policymakers in Washington, D.C. We're actually going to be doing that next week. And Doris might want to add to what I've just said.
Doris?
Well, I think you've covered it very well, Laura. Yeah, and Laura, as you just mentioned, we're going to Washington. We're starting to meet with people on Monday in Washington. In fact, Laura is there now in the States. Paul's going tomorrow. I'm going on Sunday. And we're setting up meetings Monday through Friday. It's a bit like speed dating, if I can put it that way. Every 30 minutes, we will be meeting with someone different. And we are going to speak to, let's say, organizations, think tanks, and governmental agencies on Monday and Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the House and the Senate. We have about, I'm going to say, more than 50 meetings, maybe 55 meetings scheduled. And so it's just nonstop all day long from, 9 till 5 or whenever they're done working. And we go there, and this is across nonpartisan. We're a nonpartisan organization. So we talk to the Democrats, the Republicans, and the independents. And depending who's across from us, we broach the issue. There are, we get to know what the positions of some of these people, what the positions are. So if we think somebody could be educated more on a topic that they haven't yet pronounced on, then we go there and we educate them on the topic. We bring papers, we give them whatever they want. There's a lot of follow-up afterwards. If we're meeting somebody who's in our corner, so to speak, we commiserate, we exchange information. And if we're meeting with somebody who's hostile, and some people are hostile to some of our issues, then we do our best to gently educate them and to try to convince them. And as Laura mentioned, education is key. A lot of times they just don't know because they've never lived overseas. They don't know anybody who's lived overseas. And I think there must be people in Congress who don't even have a passport. We find the ones who are most receptive to us are those who maybe lived overseas back when they were students, or maybe have a daughter or son who's living overseas, and all of a sudden they realize that there are problems. So this is an annual trip that we make, and it's a very important trip. We make a lot of relationships with people, and we reinforce relationships from past years. And that is on top of the advocacy we do year round. And as Laura mentioned, we do talk about tax every time with about everybody we can. Banking, and Paul will cover that, has become more hot button in the last few years, I would say. The citizenship and the voting, we have a new voting issue we're going to talk about, but some of the citizenship issues, most of that was dealt with a few decades ago, but there's still a few small things that may remain. But we listened to our members. We did a survey of our members at the end of 2020, asking them what were their issues. And we took that as our strategy going forward on what are the things they want us to talk about. And we recently had a town hall to try to reinforce, is this the kinds of things that you want us to talk about? So we listen to people and we try to educate people, and we do our best. We just keep on plotting.
If I could add one thing, one of the biggest challenges in getting change is that Americans who live overseas are not all in the same situation. As I mentioned before, if all of your income is U.S. sourced and you live outside the United States, you're probably not going to experience a lot of these problems. Banking maybe, but a lot of the tax problems you won't experience. But on the other hand, if you've lived outside the United States for all or most of your life, and some Americans have never lived in the United States, some U.S. citizens, and all of your income and your assets and your investments, everything is outside the United States, that's where, you're going to have a lot of problems. And so you have different people with very different perspectives because they have very different experiences. And so sometimes it's difficult, to understand, okay, a solution for one person, the ideal solution for one person, another person might not see as the ideal solution for them, and this makes it difficult to finally get a resolution to these problems.
Many nuances. I understand it must be really hard, and I think the work that you are doing, advocating, is much needed, and good luck to all of you, because it's very difficult to educate people on a subject they're not very familiar with, because basically they've never lived abroad, or have friends or family that did live abroad, and that makes a lot of difference. But let's carry on the challenges. We talked a lot about taxes, which is great. But now I did not know. Okay, so Paul, please help us here. So why do Americans residing abroad face difficulties in maintaining a U.S. bank account and opening a bank account in certain jurisdictions?
Okay. There are two different sets of problems here. One is accounts in the United States are heavily governed by the banks being subject to anti-money laundering regulation, which can be fairly heavy-handed, if you like. And Americans can, how to describe it? Essentially, banks calculate risk scores for clients individually. And if your risk score goes up, you come under heavier scrutiny from the banks, and it can get to the point where they say they just don't want to deal with you anymore. That's the banks, the whole banking system has essentially been enlisted as police deputizing for the Treasury on fighting mainly anti-money laundering and terrorism stuff. A number of the particular element of this story that exposes expats to the problem is that non-residence by itself is taken to be a high-risk factor for being, whether it's child trafficker, drug dealer, arts and antiquities dealer kind of problem. And this essentially turns non-residents into cost centers. There are no laws saying that non-residents cannot have accounts or something. It's left as a business decision to banks, but non-residents tend to be high-cost people. Anything that's done online and is not face-to-face is also scored as higher risk. And this approach to assessing the risk of a customer is a cumulative calculation. And as your risk score goes up, the risk of being booted out of your bank becomes more and more of a problem. And this manifests itself with people finding themselves. We have a lot of cases of people being simply asked to leave, especially brokerage accounts and IRAs. Just find another place to take your account. So that's.
And Paul, how do they address this problem? What's the solution then? How does Arrow help?
Well, sometimes I'm not sure we're being very successful. I think Doris and Laura have set out that we try to communicate with people in Washington who are involved with this and bring this to their attention. We find that many people in Washington, in the policy sphere, both in the agencies and in Congress, the staffers know very little about this, which means that it comes to something as a surprise to them to see the evidence of these problems happening. The other practical manifestation of this is that where people are able to maintain their accounts, they often come with high minimum account balance and heavy fee structures, which makes them expensive.
Yeah.
And what that puts you in a situation is that middle-aged and older people who have a lifetime of accumulating savings can have a pretty good balance and find a solution to finding a bank who will host their accounts. The solution involving rather high fees. We've got one case of somebody having to pay $40,000 to host an IRA, which seems high to a lot of us. Minimum balances can be, asking middle of the market price, I would guess, is $1 million. Banks will come down fairly easily, a fair way on that. But you get much below $500,000, and a lot of banks just won't want to talk to you.
Okay.
I'd like, if I could please add one point to that, if I may, Suzanne. This would be important for your clients who are thinking of moving overseas in retirement. As Paul said, banks find that the accounts of Americans overseas are cost centers, so they want to boot you out. And when it comes to retirement accounts, we're talking about IRAs. If someone has a 401k, that's a lot less likely to be terminated by a bank. You're less likely to be kicked out. So a lot of people before moving overseas might have the idea that they would roll their 401k into an IRA, because people tend to like to do that in the States. I think the general advice would be, don't do that. Just leave it as a 401k. Of course, if you're happy with the investment, choices that you have to, of course, take everything into account when you make that decision. But keep in mind that if you move overseas, your retirement monies back in the United States, if they're sitting in a 401k, are less likely to be kicked out than if they're an IRA.
Okay, thank you, Doris. I think so. The main takeaway is that you have to do a lot of preparation, you have to do a lot of research, because it's a case by case sort of situation, right? And when it comes to Arrow, you have been doing a fantastic work and advocating and changing this current scenario. So that's really good. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. We are now hitting the 40 minutes mark, and we got some really interesting questions here. I don't know if we'll be able to go through all of that, all these questions, but keep jotting them down because they will be answered later when it goes published on YouTube. We're able to answer on the comments as well. But I'd like to spare a moment with Amanda Klekowski von Kompenfels to practice my pronunciation of her beautiful surname, and also to ask her again about the concept of citizenship as a form of currency. So, Amanda, you know this concept, it has emerged due to its ability to provide significant benefits and opportunities across international borders. Um, can you number some of the reasons why citizenship is increasingly being viewed this way?
Sure, absolutely. And my apologies first. My video seems to have frozen, so I am stuck there immobile. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you very well.
Citizenship is a backup plan. You can, if you have access to a second citizenship, for instance, through ancestry, if you have ancestors from Ireland or Italy, for example, you can acquire that second citizenship on the basis of descent, but you don't ever have to move. You might think about moving. It might be a backup plan. You might just sit on it. It might let you go overseas for more than the 90 or 180 days that most tourist visas are. It might let you work somewhere for a short time. So that's something that we see this with other migrant groups also, that the acquisition of a second passport is something that folks do, as a just in case plan. Definitely.
Laura, do you want also to talk about it? Because I know you also have some strong views on citizenship, second citizenship as a form of currency.
Yes, I totally agree with Amanda. We see that more and more now. People were, because as Amanda said, when you talk about the U.S., it's a country that is made up of immigration. So many people will have the possibility of acquiring citizenship by descent, because their ancestries are in Europe and in other countries. But then more and more also, people are looking to other strategies to acquire a second citizenship. If you don't have the possibility to do that by descent, then you can look at residence permits, and then after 5 or 4 or even 10 years, you can acquire citizenship. And there is also a possibility of investment migration, when you can invest in a country, in some funds in the country, or in real estate opportunities, and the country will either give you the right, for some years you can acquire the citizenship, or directly to CBI schemes. And many people, the people that of course can afford this strategy, will look to this possibility of investment migration when they want to increase their global mobility and have a second passport, or access to some jurisdictions, to the business, or to get better life quality, and they don't have this possibility of acquiring citizenship by descent or by blood.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We have a couple of seconds, but I'll give a couple of minutes, not a problem. And but I'd like to go through some questions here. Those questions are really, really good. I won't be able to answer to get all of them to be answered here. I know Amanda has been busy typing and putting together some answers, so thank you very much, Amanda. I think mostly, how about if we condense it all around taxes? Because, for instance, we got this question here, which was someone thought about, they believed there was a reciprocity tax agreement, and who wants to answer there? Amanda, do you want to come on board and share your thoughts?
Sure. On the question of taxation, yes,
Yeah.
So I live in Belgium, which is a pretty high tax country. And so when I pay my Belgian taxes, then essentially, I mean, through a tax return, I tell the United States I've already paid my taxes, and they agree because of a dual taxation agreement that I don't owe the U.S. anything. But I do need to file that tax return. Double taxation so in that case, I don't pay double taxes, right? Double taxation can certainly emerge in terms of investment and pensions, but that's again a separate matter. But in terms of salary, for the most part, depending on where you live, there will be more. There will be less aspects of double taxation.
I can respond also to that question.
I was going to Laura as well.
There's a common misunderstanding that the tax treaties that the United States has with however many there are eliminates tax problems. And that's really not at all what's happening. What you typically, the people who typically, there are a few exceptions to this, but the people who typically benefit from the tax treaties are Americans who live in the United States, who have income outside the United States, and people who live out, and people who are not citizens and who live outside the United States who have U.S. source income. The people who are the least helped by the tax treaties, and in some cases many cases not helped at all, are Americans who live, U.S. citizens who live outside the United States. And the reason is because of what's called the savings clause, which is found in every U.S. tax treaty, where the other party to the treaty agrees that the United States can treat its citizens as if they were U.S. residents. And so can you benefit from the foreign earned income exclusion? Yes. Can you claim foreign tax credits? Sure. But neither of those eliminate really the many, many issues that you'll have on top of that. The foreign earned income exclusion applies only to earned income. So if your income is only from a job and it's under the threshold, yeah, you still have to file a return, which, as Amanda said, can be quite burdensome. But the longer you live outside the United States, the more your income is not earned income. It's retirement, it's disability, it's from investments. Then the foreign earned income exclusion does nothing for you. Foreign tax credits may or may not work in any given instance. It depends on the type of credit, your type of income doesn't match. The calculations are quite confusing. And then on top of that, you have the fact that the United States penalizes so many forms of foreign income. And if you live outside the United States, if you live in the United States and all your income and your assets are all located in the United States, those penalizing provisions won't affect you. You won't care about them or think about them. But if your entire life is outside the United States, or even some of your financial life, then you're going to care that the United States sees all of that as foreign, even though it's not foreign to you. The United States sees it as foreign and penalizes it, and the tax treaties have nothing to do with that, because you get to be taxed as if you live as if you were a U.S. resident, even though you're not. I hope that responds to that question.
No, it does, Laura. Thank you. It's a complex one, so it's not a question that you answer quickly and straight away. So I'm really glad I had all of you here. I had one question here that keeps being repeated throughout the duration of the chat, which is why attend, discover the prime locations that are attracting American retirees and why. So I just wanted to say that within our US retirement report, there's a list of 16 countries. It's the ranking of the best places for Americans to retire, and you'll be able to find it on our intelligence unit website. My colleague Thomas will share the link here with you now, and I think that's it. So does anyone have any closing remarks before we say bye-bye?
Thank you very much for inviting us, Suzanne.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, and check up our report, our guide on U.S. retirement, and you're gonna find the insights about best destinations depending on the reasons people say that they will the motivations for relocation.
Great. Thank you all. And I know it was hard to get all of you, but if our viewers here, you don't know, you've been given a great A team of specialists. Amanda, Doris, Paul, Laura, thank you very much. Both Lauras. Thank you very much for being here with us. And I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.